Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I currently work at U.S. Cyber Command, but my comments represent my own views. They are not the official view of any government agency. I think I'm the only member of the executive branch serving that is actually on a panel. So. And I'm also a recovering academic, so my talk is going to have a little bit of a conceptual theory flavor to it. What I hope to do is just to leave you with a framework and a set of tools to think about the cyber threat landscape. Okay, so that because we've talked a lot about different dimensions of it, what I want to argue is that cyber offers new means to gain strategic advantage without physical aggression. I mean, that's the core of what the cyberspace environment delivers. We have to understand this, what I call strategic cyber competition, if democratic states hope to prevail and advance their interests and values. So Senator Rubio talked about great power competition, and he talked about the battle space. But as the previous panel noted, and as JP also noted, I would argue cyberspace is one of the major battlefields in this competition. And essentially the reason why is because technology has provided a new way to gain strategic advantage without war. Okay, it is an alternative to war. It's not lethal, it's not about coercion, it's not always about shaping perceptions and trying to change decision calculus, but basically it's the use of non-lethal capabilities to exploit pervasive vulnerabilities for cumulative gain. This is perhaps the most critical aspect, okay? It's not about each intrusion or each incident or each hack. If we keep thinking about it that way, we never think of it as significant. It's the cumulative impact over time of thousands of examples of IP theft, right? Of exploitation of cryptocurrency for North Korea to advance its nuclear weapons program, okay? So essentially, this is a way to undermine the West's military capabilities, our economic competitiveness, our social cohesion, and the confidence and the faith in our democratic institutions. And essentially, we can do this all by exploiting systems in and through cyberspace. That competition is occurring along ideological fault lines, and it's critical to realize that authoritarian powers figured this out first. They figured it out in 2011 after the Arab Spring. And what they saw was that cyberspace was an existential threat to their hold on power. So they began to focus on their domestic populations. They began to surveil them, to control them. Then they took those techniques and they turned them outward on the world, on their adversaries globally. They're trying to reshape the international system and its technological foundations. We've had discussions about the creation of censored networks, of using information operations for mass cognitive attacks, cyber-enabled information operations to erode political legitimacy, to split our alliances, and to undermine the social cohesion and the confidence in democratic institutions. The proliferation of these tools through smart cities in order to undermine democratic values, and working in standards bodies essentially to really remake the economic and technological foundations of the international system. So the fundamental existential question that we face is that, and this came up in the previous panel, do we want to see information freedom or do we want to see information control? Okay, because that is where the challenge and the competition is. Okay, why does it exist? Really quickly, I'm going to just make an argument that cyberspace is a distinct strategic environment. What I mean is that it's undergirded by a set of technical capabilities that can independently change the distribution of power. Okay, we have three strategic environments: nuclear, right? If you get nuclear weapons, that changes the distribution of power. Conventional is a second way, and cyberspace is a third way. It's a technology that is globally interconnected, pervasive vulnerabilities, and it gives you the ability to reach out and touch your adversaries and your friends' sources of national power without breaching territorial boundaries and without having to use any physical kinetic capability. This is transformational in how we think about defending the essence of our countries. And because the entry costs are so low, states are incentivized to exploit it. And that is what we have been seeing. Much of the behavior below the level of armed conflict has been exploitation. Okay, fait accomplis, not trying to change your opinion. I mean, China's not saying, well, stop doing IP theft if you do X, Y, and Z. No, they're just stealing. So we're seeing this mass exploitation. And so the question is, how are we going to deal with it? What I would argue is that it depends on continuously understanding, anticipating, knowing your vulnerabilities, taking those vulnerabilities away before they are attacked. Right? Because if they're in your networks, you've already lost. If you're asking yourself, how do I respond? How do I react? You've already lost. You have to think proactively about engaging in the global system and working together with partners to be vigilant, to anticipate, and to act. Okay, so what can we do? And then I'll conclude on these points. First of all, we have to understand. We have to understand that this behavior is routinized and it is normalized. And that means it's a norm, okay? Doesn't mean we like it, but a norm is normal behavior, okay? We're seeing restraint above the use of force threshold. We're not seeing escalation, but we're seeing pervasive exploitation below that level. I would argue that the consequences are tantamount to what in the past we saw from war. We are experiencing strategic loss. But we can act. We can do something because we don't have to be concerned that we're going to escalate. So acting is a two-part thing. One is enabling, working with our partners to be able to share information, to understand vulnerabilities, to expose malign behavior. We in Cyber Command do defend forward operations. We're helping partners understand their vulnerabilities, taking them away, taking those opportunities away from countries that might exploit them, and then acting, okay? And sometimes that means operating and disrupting those activities in cyberspace. The key point here is the purpose is not to deter, because you can't deter that behavior, okay? The purpose is to preclude and to make sure that the bad guys and women don't succeed. And I would just close by saying that legislators have a huge role to play in this. Okay, if you look at Japan's new national security strategy of active cyber defense, critically depended on legislative changes to allow them to do that. Ukraine's legislative changes, which permitted it to move data into the cloud and overturning a data protection law, critical for its ability to preserve its government data in the war. And similarly, the United States, legislative changes were foundational in our ability to be proactive and to try to take those opportunities away from the adversaries. So I'll just conclude there and look forward to questions.